Let's start with this trade deal. You know, immense anticipation yesterday of what was going on. Some journalists, you know, hurried down to Coventry only to find out that the press conference by Sir Keir Starmer was not in Coventry. In fact, it was in Solihull. So it was a fun day out for lots of people. But looking at it now, the day after in the morning, does this feel like, Caroline, to you, that this is a genuinely good trade deal and we've got what people have been wanting for many years from America?
Look, we've turned a trade war into a trade deal, and I think Starmer needs credit for that. I mean, a few weeks ago, it seemed like everything was just not on the table. Now we've got aluminium and steel down to 0% in terms of tariffs. Cars from something like 27.5% down to 10%. That's going to be massive for our car industry, particularly luxury cars, you know, Land Rover, Rolls-Royce, Jaguar. It's big. And then, of course, on the food side of things, I mean, we're going to exchange the same amount of their beef for our beef, but there's no hormone, there's no headless chickens running around or anything like that.
Yet, though. I mean, when the environment representative from the White House yesterday was asked, she said she's coming to the UK on Monday. We have the best beef in the world. Everyone wants our beef, and you know, and she's going to try and come here and try and persuade us, I suppose, to take their hormone-fed beef.
The government has been clear. There's no hormone-fed beef in this deal, and that's important because you know we've had a deal with India just announced in the last week. We've got the deal with the US, but also on the cards is a deal with the EU as well. And, you know, part of the EU deal will be about not accepting hormone-fed beef. We're getting the beef, but we're sending them our beef as well.
So and giving them some beef.
And it's all good beef.
What do you mean?
Is it a load of beef?
Caroline thinks it's a good deal. Was it as good as we could have got? Is it better for the US? Was it a rush deal?
First of all, it's not a deal. It's just heads of terms. Like, let's just be clear about... Let's just be clear about something.
That they never got a deal during 14 years.
The India deal that you're all claiming for yourself now is what the Tories did in government.
Like,
deals don't just magic up out of nowhere, do they?
Why are the Tories dissing it then? Why are they dissing it if the Tories did it?
Actually, I don't understand that, because they should claim credit for the fact that Keir Starmer's just putting a Labour stamp on the Conservative work in government. But let's be honest. First of all, this whole, like, we're giving their beef, they're giving us our beef. Why don't we just eat our own beef then and save on the, like, sustainability points? Flying all... I mean...
Because you like to sell beef abroad as well.
No sense to me whatsoever. And also, this idea that, oh, God, right, we've gotten these tariffs that they imposed back down to zero. OK, great. The 10% tariff overall still has not changed. And we also aren't in a position where we actually know any of the detail until it's actually written down in fine print about what this actually...
Yeah, I mean, actually,
oh, my goodness.
There's still a lot of questions,
isn't there? The Director-General of UK Steel said last night, he said, you know, 0%, that's all good, but we don't know what the conditions are in place to try and achieve 0%. And there's many steel companies, we don't know if all of them are going to be able to meet those conditions.
But by the way, this is...
And that's the Director-General of UK Steel.
Yeah, exactly. So we don't know. So that's the practicalities around the deal. But let's just look at the politics of this for a second. The President of the United States made what I would describe as a big boo-boo by deciding that he was going to have all these tariffs in all these countries. And we were like, oh, OK, we'll just be really quiet and we won't say anything. And we say, oh, God, now that we've got a trade deal, we had the right approach. No, it's because Donald Trump now needs an off-ramp to tell people, actually, you know, what I did wasn't crazy. Look the UK has done it. So why have we ended up being Donald Trump's excuse?
I think you protest too much. I mean, that is, you know...
facts.
Yeah, well, I'm sorry, but, you know, look, to have a deal, to be the first country out of all the ones being rocked by President of the United States trade tariff war is pretty amazing. And it's not just the end of it, it's the first step. And Starmer deserves some credit for that.
But it's a little bit like, you know, we're going into heads of ITV saying, look, could I have a pay rise? And they say, no, actually, you're going to get a pay cut. All right, OK, I'm not really happy with that. But 3 weeks later to say, actually, you know what, we decided you can go back to the pay that you were on. And me going, wait, well, that's a win, isn't it? That's great. That's exactly what's happened, hasn't it?
Well, you could turn it around and say, they could say to you, you're going to get a pay cut, Adil, and you go in and say, well, don't do that. And they say, do you know what, actually, we won't do that at the end of the day. Either way, where we were before this deal was seeing massive increase in tariffs on steel. I mean, you know...
Yeah, but we were before that, though, there were lower tariffs, so essentially it has gone up.
But that's the way these things work, isn't it? And we always knew that the United... we always knew that the President...
OK, fine.
No, they're not lauding it. They've said it's a first step.
Well, what we saying it's a great deal.
0% on aluminium and steel when jobs are at risk. Jobs, people in some of our car factories were going to be losing their jobs literally in the next week or two if they went ahead with the tariffs on those cars, and it's not happening like that. So this is the first step. And actually, do you know what? I mean, in any other situation, you know, maybe it's about sort of the Englishness of our country. We'd be saying, well, actually, this is pretty good. It's not necessarily the end of the story,
on those figures,
but my God, it's better than
if we look at the average tariff on UK exports, it's risen from 3.4% before Trump became president to 10%. Well, we have now agreed to cut tariffs on US imports to the UK from 5.1% down to 1.8%. So it's quite clear who the winner is here, isn't it? And it's not us.
I think what we've got, actually, with the United States, unlike other countries, a pretty balanced trade exchange, and that's what's put us in a strong position as well. And I think this is the first step in negotiations. But I think, actually, today people can actually feel we've done something here as a country. We've managed to offset what were the threats to our steel and aluminium industries, to our car industries. And we've got a dialogue going on, which I have to say, considering there's triple-digit figures in terms of tariffs on China and elsewhere, I mean, I think that's pretty good.
Listen, it's not like we're China.
One thing's for certain, I mean, there was definitely political advantage taken by both, as somebody said, President Trump and Sir Keir Starmer. Caroline, is Sir Keir Starmer comparing this deal that we don't know much about, which might just be swapping a bit of beef, comparing it to Winston Churchill announcing peacetime VE Day? I mean, come on.
Yeah, it's not the most punchy of comments, and there seemed to be a bit of eye rolling going on there from a guy to.
Do you think it's secure?
Two steps down. But I have to say, what is important in this, you know, is war is better than war, as Winston Churchill said. Keep the talking going. We know, you know, a number of other countries took a slightly different approach to all this, to Starmer, and the fact is that, you know, that conversation that kept talking, he didn't just go on the offensive, has actually produced something. But yeah, I mean, that was a slightly bit of...
And calling President Donald.
That was a little bit ick. I'm sorry. Like, he did...
My mate Donald.
Yeah, mate Donald. Mr. President Donald.
As I call him.
And actually, throughout, he didn't just say it once, it was a few times he said Donald.
I'm just going to pick up a point here. You know, but you're saying that we took a slightly different approach. I mean, we did, and we're still really not that much better off, because Canada took a really tough stance, and Mark Carney was there in the Oval Office with, I would describe as a slightly chastened president. So he took a tough stance. He told him, you know, we're not going to be the 51st state. And actually, I think Donald Trump respected that more than our position, where we're sort of being a little bit
They've still got to resolve what's going to happen with Canada. That's still not... That's
fine, but at least he feels like sticking up for him.
Do you think, you know... Is there any credit to the fact that we were there first, and much was made about the fact that we were the ones that got a deal first? You know, on the international stage, how does that play out? Is that then a good thing that we were the chosen ones to get the first deal?
No. Well, that makes me think that we were the chosen ones.
We caved in too soon.
We caved in.
No, not at all.
Listen, we'll come back to you both in a second. Let's move on, because in other ways, it was a historic day yesterday. It was an incredible day, really, and I don't know whether you were watching the live pictures yesterday, but it was quite something. Catholics worldwide are celebrating the election of the first American to head the Catholic Church. Pope Leo XIV promised to build bridges in his first address as pontiff.
Well, we're joined now by Inez San Martin from the Pontifical Mission Societies in the US. Good morning to you. I know that you know the new Pope well, don't you? Why do you think he was chosen? What sort of direction is he going to take the Catholic Church in?
There are many reasons why he was chosen. One, of course, yes, the fact that he is American, which makes him a savvy administrator, at least within the College of Cardinals. He's also a man who's bound to understand the importance of transparency, accountability, and oversight when it comes to Vatican finances. Secondly, he spent 2/3 of his life not in the United States, but as a missionary, meaning truly answering that call that the Catholic Church has to go and make disciples, to bring Christ to all nations. The third fact that got him elected is that he has enough of a history, enough of an experience in the Roman Curia, meaning the central government of the Catholic Church, without having been there long enough to have gotten really infected by it.
Inez, how much is this about, I have to say, Donald Trump? I mean, he's an American. He'll be able to engage with an American audience, with a Western audience, perhaps in ways previous popes haven't been able to, purely because of his ability to speak English in an American accent so fluently. We know that on social media, he has been critical of Donald Trump's immigration policies. He's spoken out against J.D. Vance's comments about the hierarchy of how you express love in Christianity and Catholicism. He's been quite outspoken. Do you think this is a move to try and redress some of the issues that are going on in the world today?
I think it's different. Definitely a way to try to address the issues that are going on in the world. Bring an American to the discussion. Truly have someone who can be one-on-one discussing with men such as Donald Trump. But it also has to be said, the beauty of what he brings is that he's going to be engaging with an American president, having a global perspective. And something else that has to be noted, odds are, due to his age, Pope Leo XIV is going to be ruling the Catholic Church way longer than President Donald Trump is going to be ruling over the United States of America.
Yeah. Let's have a look, actually. I think a lot of people won't know that and won't have heard much about our new Pope. And actually, I think it's worth just playing a little clip where he was speaking when he was actually made cardinal. Let's have a look at this back in 2023. This is our new Pope speaking in English.
It's not coincidental that Pope Francis chose me. I've been a missionary my whole life, and I was working in Peru. But I am American, and I think I do have some insights into the church in the United States.
It's quite something, isn't it? And as we, for all of us, our generation, you've grown up with popes who, communicated, of course, but not having that fluency of the language. So it will certainly make a difference.
It certainly will make a difference in the fact that he's fluent in English, in Spanish, and Italian, obviously, but also in French, also in German. All of those things, the fact that he is truly a polyglot is going to be very, very useful when he tries to engage not only, yes, President Donald Trump and the rest of the government across the world, but obviously, first and foremost, the 1.4 billion strong Catholic Church. Those are his faithful, those are his people. And he showed it to us yesterday when he chose to not speak in English, but to speak in Spanish. A perfect Spanish, who I would argue, as an Argentinian myself, is even better than his English.
Inez, I have to put to you, there have already been claims, haven't there, that Pope Leo mishandled or swept under the carpet accusations of sexual abuse by priests. Do you think that this will cast a cloud over his election?
It is a possibility, but I think fundamentally, when he made things that we weren't really sure, we still don't know truly what happened. Most of it happened before the year 2000, which is long before the crisis truly exploded in the media, but also within the church, particularly in the United States. We're talking about 1999, when the things really became evident as to just how serious the problem was in 2002. But even then, in 1991, he didn't really have a lot to say. Now, when it comes to the way he dealt with abuse in Peru, what I was told is for most of the cases, if not every single one of them, he actually did what had to be done, meaning he removed the priest from ministry whenever that priest was credibly accused. He went thoroughly with the investigation. He welcomed the victims. And this is a man who specifically, personally told those abuse victims who wanted to talk to the media to do so that they could help the Catholic Church clean itself and rid itself of this tragedy. Also, it has to be said, not just within the Catholic Church, but society at large. One child who is abused is one child too many. However, what I have to say, what matters most is looking forward. What is this man going to be doing to ensure that the Catholic Church becomes truly that place that is clean of sexual abuse forever?
Inez, thank you so much. We will have to leave it there, but we really appreciate your time. Inez San Martin, an Argentinian journalist who travelled the world with Pope Francis over the last number of years. And, yeah, just to clarify, of course, that people around the new Pope will deny those allegations, and they have pushed back on those. It is a remarkable moment. I remember watching this yesterday as a live TV moment, and as a Muslim watching this, thinking, what does this mean to me? And actually, what you realise, I can't think of anybody who has that power and influence over 1.4 billion people. And so, no doubt, doesn't matter where you sit, whether you're an atheist, any religion or whatever, is that he will potentially be influencing, shaping the views and values of a lot of people. There's not many people who have that kind of power and influence. It's such a big moment, especially in the times we're living in right now.
Yeah, it is. And whilst, you know, there's clearly politics in religion as well, he speaks to, you know, that 1.4 billion people around the world, regardless of their nationality, their faith and what they believe in. And he is someone who will be carrying on the traditions of Pope Francis. He comes from the Augustinian background, which means that he's not someone from a monastery background. That group actually always work in urban communities amongst the poor. And the previous Pope Leo, I've done a little bit of homework on this, the previous Pope Leo, actually one of the things he wrote, this is going back in the time of the Industrial Revolution in Europe, he wrote a doctrine on the plight of the working class in industrial society because he was concerned about the conditions. And he's following that tradition as well.
He's got a lot to live up to, hasn't he? Because Pope Francis really did transcend cultures, didn't he? I mean, think about something like the Palestine issue. He was so outspoken about that and really brought people together on that point about humanity, which a lot of other leaders haven't managed to do or don't do.
But arguably that is what the pontiff is there for, because it's not about exercising political or executive power. It is about
Although he did go into
but
politics.
It's about moral authority, which is not separate from the issues that we face as a society. It's right front and centre. There are two things that come to mind just from what we've said this morning. Firstly, we have our own election of an archbishop that needs to happen as well, and we don't separate church and state in this country. And what does it mean to you as a Muslim? I think people who have faith are quite often buoyed by the fact that there is some kind of faith community or moral purpose holding us together. So it's not a divisive thing. Secondly, I think if you think about, you know, an American pope where there is a prevalence of, you know, Catholics in public life, the vice president is a Catholic, but he's also been criticising US bishops. So I think it will be interesting to see that where Pope Francis was really talking about humanity, you know, very big on the Palestine issue, people were slightly critical with him about the Ukraine conflict. How this Pope navigates the politics in the US as well and his requirement to react to that.
It was interesting, wasn't it, to see when we looked at those pictures of so many people there gathered in the square, and you could just see the emotions on all their faces. Look at that, tears in their eyes. And we spotted
It's a very famous person.
Didn't we? A rather famous person.
See if you can work out who this is.
Let's take a look. None other than Harry Styles there amongst the crowd. So I think that shows...
Is he sure?
Just the pull. Well, that's what we're told. Oh.
Yes,
Are you doubting this?
No.
Oh, sure. That did not look like Harry Styles, did it?
Oh, right, OK. When was the last time you saw Harry?
So
I saw him the other day when we went out for dinner.
Oh, Harry. Either that
It's the people in the gallery have identified him as Harry Styles.
It must be true with them.
It must be true. I don't know who Harry Styles is.
It's not just us, honestly.
They must have been relieved. It was like a very quick turnaround.
Former Conservative advisor suggests it's not really... Harry Styles has a double.
Listen, let's move on to other matters, because something else is happening at the moment is more than 40 Labour MPs have written this letter saying that welfare cuts are impossible to support. Caroline, you know, how tricky is this going to be for the Prime Minister, the fact that this letter has been written, that there's public lack of support from these backbench Labour MPs over the planned disability cuts?
Look, I think it's 42 Labour MPs. Most of them are what I would say are the usual suspects. I mean, regardless of anything in terms of welfare, they'd probably be wanting to vote against it. But I don't think it's going to cause too much worry for Keir Starmer and the government. A lot of the issues within the Green Paper that Liz Kendall, who's in charge of this, put together, actually are very supportive of helping people with disabilities back to work, more support to those young people who, incredibly, the numbers go up enormously.
Though, is it? Well, cutting disability benefits on top of cutting payments for pensioners?
Well, that's slightly different on the winter fuel allowance situation. But actually, the government have actually increased the rate of payments for some forms of universal credit. They want to put more money into getting people back to work. And the truth is, whilst, you know, these people, many of them signing the letter, say that there is a problem here, particularly with the number of young people who are not entering to work at all, then they've got no answers to that. But I don't think it will worry them. They'll sort something out between now and the vote. Some of them may be asked to... They could be abstaining or whatever. But actually, there's a job that needs to be done here. But it needs to be mindful that many of the organisations, disability groups, want to be reassured, and that's the job.
Well, that's the trouble, isn't it?
Reassure those organisations, not necessarily some of these MPs who would vote against anything to change the welfare system whatsoever.
For those people who are on these disability benefits, it must be a really worrying time to think, are my benefits going to be cut? For those genuine people who rely on those, it's a tough time.
Yeah, it is. And I think the argument has always been from these 41 MPs that nobody elects a Labour government to cut welfare. So there is going to be a real difficulty for Keir Starmer, because if they're rebelling on these issues and they're being public about it, it suggests that there could be a pattern in the future, and it would be seen as a weakness for the government to give in on this now, as to some extent, it would be seen as a weakness for them to try and change winter fuel.
All right.